episode, and this is episode 4 of Kindness is Not Weakness. I'm here with Karmilla, and we originally met in Johannesburg in 2016 at Slutwalk. And we've kind of just stayed in touch ever since via social media and things like that. And now I'm in the UK and you're in Greece.
Yes.
Yeah, none of us in Johannesburg anymore. So tell us a little bit about Slutwalk. What has been your journey? How did you get into being an advocate of consent? How did this become your area of focus?
Well, being born a female into apartheid era Indian townships, I think I was born an activist, actually. Yeah, you can't be born with more than 2 brain cells to rub together and not want to fight a system that oppressive. So, it's just, I think, so my journey started quite early with that. But with Slutwalk specifically, I saw an advertisement in the newspaper, strangely enough. There's this huge poster with Sass Schultz. I'm not sure if you remember her from the original.
No.
Oh, she's gorgeous. She's a South African actress who was in LA when all of this started. And she brought it over to South Africa and she was like, we've got to do this. And so I went to the first one in 2011 and Sassy stood up there, and I do have permission to tell her story in case people are going to jump up and down and go, how dare you tell other people's stories? Sassy has given me carte blanche to use her story wherever, whenever.
Okay.
She gets up on stage at the first Slutwalk ever, and she's wearing these boys' flannel pajamas, and she says, I'm actually glad I was wearing this in my own bed when people broke into my house and raped me. And the crowd just went quiet, like, how is this woman grateful for anything like that? And she says, because that way, nobody could blame me for what happened. And then she starts unbuttoning this boy's top that she's wearing. And she goes, but what if I had been wearing this instead? And she rips off this oversized flannel pajama top. And underneath is this slinky little camisole. And she goes, would this have given anybody the right to rape me? And in that moment, I knew that this was what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
What a amazing, powerful story. What's the simplest way we can explain consent to people?
Pay attention. If there is any hint of discomfort at all, you stop.
Absolutely. Anything short of enthusiasm.
Exactly. No. Anything short of an enthusiastic yes is a no.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to young men and women that are out there now, possibly in, clubs and vulnerable situations, or even women walking home on the street by themselves, or the men that are out there as well? What is the advice that we give?
Respect personal boundaries. If she's walking down the street by herself, it's not an invitation. It's her trying to get from point A to point B. If she wanted your attention, she'd turn around and say, hey, you want to walk me home?
Yeah, exactly.
She doesn't need you to come up to her and make offers. And if she says no the first time you ask, just for crying out loud, listen.
Yeah.
She's not saying no to play hard to get. She's not saying no because of any one of a million reasons that suits your ego. She's saying no because she doesn't want you around. So bugger off and leave her alone.
Yeah. I recently read something on Facebook about if a girl gives you her number in a club, read it back to her to see if she's giving you a fake number. And I was like, no. Why would you test that? If you think she's giving you a fake number, just walk away. You know, if she wanted to give you her number, she would have.
Exactly. But also, this concept of giving a fake number is already problematic. Why can't you just say, no, I don't want to give you my number? Why is that not a thing?
Well, I guess it does sometimes come back to fear. I mean, you don't always know how a man is going to react when you say, no, I'm not interested. You know, I've had men become very aggressive with me in my younger days when I still went to bars. When they try to offer me a drink and I'd say no, and then they'd ask me again and I'd say no again. And then sometimes they would still buy the drink and bring it to me anyway. And I would just be like, I'm not going to drink this. I said no. And some of them would become really angry about it. So I think women just find it so much safer and easier just to give a fake number, or the obvious excuse of, oh, I'm actually married, or I have a boyfriend, even when they don't. I think it's not a safe environment for women to say, I'm not interested. I think a lot of this starts from very early childhood. So when do you advise people to start having the consent conversation with their kids? And I want to be very clear that I'm talking about boys and girls. I'm not talking about having the conversation with girls to protect themselves. I'm very, very explicitly saying we need to talk to little boys about this as well. So what age would you start, or what age did you start with your own kids?
The second they were born, even before they were able to communicate. When I was dressing them, I would explain why I was touching them in certain ways. It was, Mommy's now going to take off your nappy because we need to clean you, and explain to them that there's a reason for the touch. My son's now 12 years old. He still doesn't like being kissed on the skin. I'm allowed to kiss his hair and his clothes, but not his skin, because we started off that young knowing what our personal boundaries were and having the confidence to be able to say, I like this kind of touch, I don't like that kind of touch.
Yeah, and absolutely.
That then plays in with his relationship with other people as well, because he understands now that his boundaries are being met. So there's a huge age gap between him and his sister. She's 8 years older than him. So she was already working at one stage while he was still at home, and he'd made her a little Lego something or other, put it in a gift bag, but she wasn't at home to give him permission to go into her room. So he left the gift bag at her door. He would not open the door to her room without consent. And that's what we need to be teaching our kids. And we don't do that in a once-off birds and the bees conversation. You don't build that kind of confidence, that kind of mutual respect in a one-off conversation. It's got to be a continuous way of life.
I think something that I see that is very problematic is when kids are forced affection for family members, you know. I've never ever done that with my daughter. Obviously, I've always been very, very firm with her bodily autonomy. But I do see it in other kids, and, oh, give your cousin a kiss, or give your grandma a hug, or, oh, she's so sad because you didn't give her a hug, or things like that. I think people need to understand that that is a violation of consent. It is. If your child does not want to kiss their grandma or hug their uncle, by forcing them to do so, you're teaching them that they're not in charge of their own bodies.
Absolutely. And you're also teaching them that they're almost obliged to give in to other people's needs, especially with that, you know, look how sad she is that you didn't hug her. You know, oh, okay, so her sadness is more important than my comfort at being touched. So what happens 18 years down the line when she's at a club and some guy gets angry because she won't let him touch her? Oh no, he's angry. That's more important than how I feel about my body. Then we wonder why women don't leave abusive relationships. It's just
Yeah, exactly. And I think it bleeds into so many things. It bleeds into, patriarchal society and people pleasing, and just, I think women are taught from a young age not to hold space, not to take up space and voice how they feel and things like that. I think it took me into my 30s, honestly, to say, no, like, hold my boundaries. No, I'm not comfortable with this, and I don't care how happy it makes you. But I think I'm hoping that the next generation will be better at this, because I'm hoping that conversations like these are happening a lot more. So do you think our daughters and sons are going to grow up a bit differently? Do you think it is getting better?
Yeah. I don't know about the world in general, because I only have interaction with my kids and their friends generally, and that gives me loads of hope. Just watching the way that they talk to each other. I mean, even now, when they're on separate continents, there's still that conversation that happens on Discord where it's just the siblings and mommy and daddy are not involved, and they are absolutely confident in claiming that right. It's, there's no concept of, oh, I can't be alone with my conversation because it might offend mommy or daddy. It's, please, can you leave the room now? I'd like to speak to my sister alone, and having that respected, I think, makes a huge difference to how they interact with people expecting the same of them further down the line. So it's interesting for me to watch, because I grew up in the opposite culture, of, we had one phone line that was in the lounge, and if somebody phoned, you were sitting there in the lounge with the whole family watching TV while you tried to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
There was no such thing as boundaries and, anything personal at all. So watching my kids unpack all of this for me is unbelievable. So I can't wait to see what happens with my grandkids and how they raise.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the conversation is also going into, I mean, when you think of consent, I think you think of sexually, our minds go to bodily consent, bodily autonomy. But we're also talking here about your son not going into your daughter's room without consent, and you allowing them the privacy to have their own conversations without you involved, which to me just comes down to the concept of treating children like human beings. Treat them like consenting adults. If you went to your mom's house, like for my example, if I went to my mom's house, I wouldn't just walk into her bedroom. Absolutely. You would think that was rude, so I think it comes down to respecting their boundaries and their privacy as you would another adult as well. Treating them like full people.
Because they are, and that's how they learn to be full people. There isn't I come across so many people who are like, oh, well, they're too young for this and we can't do that. You don't have to talk to them about sex at 5. And that's not where this conversation starts. And that's why I keep bringing it back to the everyday things, because it's not just about sex. It's not just about their bodies. It's about an attitude to life. It's an attitude of respect for all that exists around them. And it's not just about whether somebody's saying yes or no to a sexual context. It's about not kicking the dog. It's about, asking permission to pick fruit off somebody else's tree. It's all of the things that make for kinder interactions with our environment as a whole.
Yeah.
And that will automatically create a consent culture.
Yeah.
Because when you grow up with respect, when you live mutual respect in every moment of your life, there is no alternative when you turn 18, when you turn 21, when you walk into a club and you see a girl in a mini skirt. There's no option of disrespect because that's never been
You've
part
never
of
seen.
who you've
Yeah.
been taught to be.
Yeah. I think it also comes down to this concept of equality, because if you see someone, despite gender, sexuality, the color of their skin, anything, what they're wearing, if any of that makes you think that you have a right over them or they are somehow not equal to you, that's where the problem comes from. So if you are looking at a woman as less than, so she's not quite my equal, so she doesn't get to tell me what I can and cannot do, or you're looking at a person of color, or you're looking at a trans person or whatever, it just comes down to respect and equality and looking and valuing every human being as a human being as valuable as you yourself are, regardless of backgrounds and things.
Completely agreed, 100%.
Yeah. So I think that's what this whole project of mine is about, is just people are people, and every person, whatever their background is, whatever snap judgments you have about people, because you can see somebody walking past a window, have no interaction with them, and in your mind you've decided who they are because of what they're wearing, what color their skin is, they're in a same-sex relationship, or those kinds of things.
The body language, the way that they walk, the way that
the color of their hair, that they have tattoos.
Absolutely.
We make snap judgments about people all the time, and it seems so crazy to me sometimes because you have no idea who that person is.
Absolutely.
But you've already decided their value. Yeah.
I know. And at the risk of sounding like I'm showing off about my kids too much,
please do.
I'm so terribly proud of them. The other day we went, AJ and I went down to the beach, and he hasn't had many friends here because of the language barrier and whatnot. And there was this group of boys that just walked past us on the beach, and I was like, oh, those are the kids that you should make friends with. They're obviously the cool kids. And he looks at me and goes, but Mom, how do you know they're the cool kids? I was like, well, I don't know, I just do. And the fact that I had to stop and think about how I knew that these were the cool kids.
Yeah.
Because he's been homeschooled and unschooled his whole life. So he hasn't had that interaction at school of seeing the confidence of the cool kids. It doesn't matter what they're wearing or what they look like. There's just something about the way they carry themselves, that confidence that radiates from a mile away. And, he had no concept of that. He was just like, but Mom, you haven't even said 2 words to them. How do you know whether or not they're cool?
Yeah, he was calling you out on your snap judgments. Yeah, that's amazing. That's so great.
That's what I think the thing is with this next, is to call us out on our side as well.
Exactly. I think a part of the reason I started this journey with this project as well was because you must have, even you have, though you're so aware of it, but you still have those snap judgments. Absolutely. So I'm sure I do as well. I must make certain judgments of certain people when I see them by, just appearance or hear an accent or, those kinds of things. And I just want to be more aware of that in myself as well, that you don't do that. You don't just decide in a second who someone is when you have no idea. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If I could wave my magic wand and make you president of the whole world in one day, what is the very first thing that you would change?
The education systems around the world.
What would you change about them?
Everything. The fact that you have to put your hand up and ask permission to go to the bathroom. It's like the biggest violation of consent on the planet. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you violate somebody's personal body autonomy to the extent that you expect them to ask permission to go to the bathroom? And it's something that every student takes for granted, whether you're in South Africa or England or Greece or, in the US, they have hall monitors and you need to have hall passes to be out of class at a certain time. Just how do we accept as an entire species that all of our children from the age of 6 to the age of 18 will spend 6 hours a day sitting in a chair offering blind obedience to complete strangers? Who decided this was a good plan?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And learning nothing about actual real life.
Absolutely.
Like no actual social skills, life skills, self-awareness.
Exactly.
Coping skills.
Yeah. And before we even get there, just the fact of challenging their body clocks to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to this place that they hate going to 9 times out of 10. Yeah, I mean, kids' bodies aren't made to go against what their bodies actually need. That's the whole basis of the school system. Never
And
mind
it's
the
not really
content
conducive
and the
to learning.
brainwashing that gets chucked into them afterwards. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in terms of consent and the school culture, it's just horrifying. It's you will be here when we tell you. You will eat when we tell you. You will go to the bathroom if you have our permission to. It's just like respect. We're trying to learn how to be a human being at all.
It's not treating them like human beings. It's not treating them like people. Yeah.
I would change the world by changing the education system, because the education system at this point pretty much is just there to dictate every single aspect of our kids' lives. They tell them when to wake up, when to eat, when to go to the goddamn bathroom. It's a ridiculous breach of consent on every level. And it conditions them into the mindset that they don't matter, that their needs are irrelevant. And that is what they pass on to everybody else. And that is how they treat the rest of the world, is that nobody's needs actually matter.
What can we do to protect ourselves and to protect each other? What do you think we can change?
For me, the biggest element of protection is bystander intervention.
Yeah.
It shows people that they're not going to get away with being disrespectful in any shape, size, or form.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily in the big things. I remember in South Africa, there was a lot of domestic violence on a huge scale. And people always had the attitude of, oh no, I'm not going to get involved. But nobody's asking you to get involved. Nobody's asking you to go in there and beat up the dude that's beating up his wife. You can just knock on the door and go, I've just run out of sugar. Can I please borrow a cup of sugar? You're not threatening anybody. You're not getting involved in the dispute. You're just shifting the energy a little bit.
So just don't turn a blind eye.
Exactly. You don't have to step up and be aggressive or interfering or put yourself in danger in any way at all. You can do it in the simplest of ways. I mean, I remember doing a talk at one of the shopping malls. I had a whole Slutwalk Tears Foundation display, and I was standing there in the storefront, and this guy was holding a woman by the hand and like leading her along, and she's just like, no, I don't want to go with you, and he's like physically pulling her towards an exit. And of course, I wasn't going to stand there and watch this, but I didn't go up to him and go, "Hey, dude, what you doing?" And I go up to them and I don't address him at all. Don't even look at him. I speak to her directly, take her other arm and say, "Look, there's something I want to show you. Come look in the store with me." And it was just such a girly thing to do. And it was just so natural that a girl would want to show another girl something else. He didn't question whether we were friends. He didn't have time to think about the fact that I was taking her away from him or whatever. She just smoothly walked with me to the display and we stood there chatting until he was gone.
Yeah.
So there are ways of intervening that don't put you at risk. You don't have to go up to the big buff guy and go, "Hey, what you doing, dude? I'm gonna punch your lights out now."
Yeah.
You can be a girl about it. Being a girl is awesome. Use it.
Yeah.
They say all of these things, don't fight like a girl, don't run like a girl, don't throw like a girl. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if I can pretend to be girly enough to want to show another girl clothes to get her away from a man that she doesn't want to be with, I'm going to do it. Like, I hate clothes shopping. I do, with a passion. But if it's going to save somebody, I'm going to go look at a pair of shoes for 10 minutes if I have to.
Yeah. So not turning a blind eye doesn't have to be confrontational necessarily.
Exactly. That's it, exactly. People think that bystander intervention has to be a confrontation or a challenge. It doesn't.
Yeah.
All you need to do is divert attention.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a very interesting concept. I like that. It might encourage more people to do more things, because I really struggle a lot with, the apathy of the world. I find it very difficult to watch someone suffering and not intervene.
Absolutely.
And I find it very difficult to wrap my head around people that just don't notice. Or I think the whole point of this, the reason I called it kindness is not weakness, is because being a kind person takes courage. It's not easy. It's not easy to not fit in with society, because a lot of people just want you to turn a blind eye. They don't want you to rock the boat. They don't want you to have the confrontation. They don't want you to say, like, this is not okay. How society is doing this is not okay. Like what you're saying about the school system. People don't want to hear that, and it takes courage to say it anyway and to do it anyway.
Absolutely. And this is why so many people are doing things differently, because I think a lot of us are coming to this understanding that what we were doing before is just not working anymore.
Yeah, it's not. You can't look at society now with so much hatred for different groups of people and anyone that is other to yourself. Everybody just hates each other. People are working all the hours that they can stand just to feed their families, and the system is just not working. You can't look at it and think that it's working.
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of people out there who are looking at the world going, "Damn, this is a crap place," but they don't know what to do about it, because it's just little old me. Who am I to question anything? And I think conversations like this open up a space for those people to come together, to realize that they're not alone, that if every one of us decides we're going to do something differently from today, we can actually change the world.
Absolutely. If you can just, as an individual, change your little world around you, and we all change our world around us a tiny bit, and we all collectively have this community of people that do think things need to change, we can change things. Things are changing. Apartheid ended. People protested, and there was activism from all around the world, and it did change. Things can change. It just takes work and it takes rocking the boat.
I've been working on a book recently with somebody else where we're having this conversation as well, where the people who are in power don't want to change it, because when you have been enjoying privilege for such a long time, equality is a step down for you, and nobody
Exactly.
wants to step down.
So, final question.
Okay.
The important one, my favorite one to ask. Can you recommend a book for us that you think everybody should read?
Reading Lolita in Tehran. Azar Nafisi, who is a professor at a women's school, a professor of literature. And this is a combination memoir and, I don't know, social commentary, I suppose, of the time when the regimes changed through the Islamic societies, and the Taliban law took effect and all of that. And there's one part of it that just made me weep buckets, where she describes how she was always religious and she wore her headscarf with pride because it symbolized something to her. And then when Islamic law became all powerful and they dictated that every woman should wear a headscarf, suddenly it didn't mean anything anymore. And the way that she describes that transition from choice to oppression is just heartbreaking. It's really incredible to watch how, things that I wouldn't necessarily have even agreed with myself. It made me see things in a completely different light. The way that these women in Iran and Iraq were oppressed to the nth degree. I mean, you can't even begin to understand how they weren't even second-class citizens. They were like third, fourth-class citizens in the way that they were treated. And yet they were able to come together in these little groups discussing literature of all things and find strength and solace in each other. It's a remarkable book.
That's it. That's all my questions. Thank you so much for joining me. This is such a good conversation.
It's an absolute pleasure. I love chatting about stuff like this.
I think probably later in the series, we will definitely see you again.
I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
Your support helps me work towards positive change. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.